Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live here from Houston and also in Montana. Good morning, Orlando.
Good morning. What's the weather like in Houston, Texas?
Ugh, I know. You always ask because we want to be so jealous about you that having a beautiful weather over there. Here it is
Right.
super hot, but I want to tell you that 2 days ago was at least we're having a little bit of a rain, and apparently this weekend we're gonna have a break from the heat, but we're gonna have a big storm. So because here in Houston, it's nothing in the middle. It's either the extreme hot weather or the extreme storm. So that's
I
what we
want,
live here.
yeah. We got some background noise, so whoever our guests are, if they can mute themselves, that'd be great. Yeah, well, good. I'm up here enjoying some beautiful weather. I mean, it's been fantastic. Yesterday was a little warm, but it's 80 degrees, 79 degrees this morning, clear skies, and but I'm outside working, so don't think it's all play and games and I'm literally doing work. So anyway, we have an exciting program. I guess there's a lot of things have happened in the state of Texas over the last couple of days. We've been on the news quite a bit. I've been watching up here, and unfortunately, we had a very tragic event again because this is nothing new. With the migrants that were trying to sneak into the United States in San Antonio, Texas. So you've lined up a pretty good show, Andrea. So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, we started this week on Monday with a tragedy in San Antonio. So far, is 51 illegal immigrants that they were found dead inside of the box of a truck, and what they call it right now as a deadliest migrant smuggling operation, almost 2 decades after 19 immigrants died also in Victoria, Texas, back in May 2003. I remember when I was doing the news back in 2003, I was reporting that tragedy in Victoria, Texas. Back in that time, it was the deadliest one. But now we're counting on 51 people. 16 more are in a hospital right now. A teenager is debating between death and life. He is in critical condition, and that it happened in San Antonio this Monday, past Monday. It's a tragedy that is not new. It's been going on every year. It's something like this, but this number of 51 immigrants die because of the heat, because they were not in conditions with no water, no air condition, nothing. They were like, we're saying in Espanol, como sardinas. They were like on top of each other, uh, like animals. They were treating them like animals. And this is so sad. What we've been seeing on the news, a lot of families, they're trying, most of them, they're from Mexico so far. They identify like, I believe, 35 of those immigrants. The majority are from Mexico. The other ones are from other countries in Central America. This is a tragedy, Orlando, that we've been seeing. I don't know if the government, with this policy of open borders, thought that this tragedy was not going to happen, but still happening, and it's getting worse.
Well, let me just tell you about the sad stuff. this 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 whole immigration wave that keeps coming since the Biden administration has come into office can end tomorrow if Congress would do something. Unfortunately, Congress has decided to do absolutely nothing because they're co-conspirators the importation of cheap labor into this country. It could be very easy for Congress in a bipartisan manner because we know we did some gun legislation after the tragic shooting in Uvalde. Congress could snap their finger and problem resolved, or the administration could put in sufficient resources to help us along the Texas border. But here's what's sad. The saddest thing is that 51 people have lost their lives. 16, as you say, are in critical condition. But those 16 people are being paid for by the taxpayers of the state of Texas. These 16 people that are in ICU and in hospitals throughout the state of Texas, perhaps in San Antonio and Bexar County, that burden is borne by the property taxpayers of Bexar County. The federal government isn't here setting up mass units trying to help these people. Yes, they'll reimburse us, probably 60%. But this problem is an economic burden on the taxpayers. Not only do we have to provide medical care, we have to educate their children, we have to provide them social services, and on top of that, we send our federal dollars every April 15th, our federal taxes to Washington, ostensibly to help fund our immigration border patrol operations in South Texas that this administration has chosen to turn their back on. It's a sad and tragic situation. Congress could fix it tomorrow. And I know that we have a very interesting guest that's going to talk about this. And, again, Andrea, after being in office for more than 30 years and being in politics for 30 years, I have reached the age where I can speak my mind. So today I'm going to lay it out on the line, at least my opinions, as to why we continuously have this situation.
Yeah, that's why we invited today our dear friend Hipolito Acosta. He is an author, former district director for Houston, Texas, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration. Back in the days, exactly the first year that he was in that position, that's when the tragedy in Victoria, Texas happened in 2003. And also, he is a former Border Patrol agent and former undercover Border Patrol agent. Welcome, Hipolito Acosta. Gracias por tu tiempo. Thank you so much for being with us. I know you were all over the news yesterday talking about not only your experience, but this tragedy that it happens Monday.
Well, thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Orlando, for having me on the program. I think the messages that we put out are important, and Orlando actually brought up a lot of excellent points as to where we are with this immigration complex issue here in the United States. And Orlando and I have discussed this over the years as well. The bottom line is that we need to get our leaders to work together for what's better for the country. Orlando just made a great point. They need to work together to find a solution, not to attack each other. And I know, without getting political in it, but even our own governor said this is a result of open borders. Well, that's not exactly correct. The tractor trailer went through a border patrol checkpoint. They crossed into the United States through the river. We have hundreds of DPS officers along the border, and a tractor trailer with close to 100 people still makes it through. And Orlando made a very good point. Why are they coming? Because of the fact that we've never settled this particular issue of people coming into the United States, finding work, reuniting with family members that used the same roadway before, whether through this administration, which now, by the way, does make it a lot more complex because of the fact that, with the asylum process they're doing, it's basically an invitation, and that has happened in the past. But we see the number of people coming in with a misconception. They get to the border, they turn themselves in, they got filed for asylum, or we have the misconception of 100 people getting into a tractor trailer, and let me put it differently, being placed in a tractor trailer where they're likely facing a situation where they can lose their lives. Andrea, you and I met in 2003 when I became the district director in Houston, when we had the tragedy in Victoria. Over the years, our leaders have not learned the lesson. We had Victoria, we had San Antonio. I had a case in El Paso where migrants died in tractor trailers. So the bottom line is, let's get back to what Orlando said. Let's put some responsibility where it goes. Let's address the issue. Let's do it right, and let's do what's best for the country.
Hipolito, I wanted you tell us a little bit of your history and your background as a border patrol agent, because this is not something new. Of course, it's new that today we're seeing 51 immigrants at the same time dying at the same time in this box, but this is not new.
It's exactly not new, Andrea, and thank you for the opportunity. I started as a border patrol agent in Marfa, Texas, a beautiful place in West Texas, and I transferred to Chicago, Illinois, where I spent 6 years as a criminal investigator. Later on, we became special agents. But one of the things that happened when I got to Chicago, that hundreds, and not thousands of people were being smuggled to Chicago, and similar to what we have today, the information that was being given was not exactly what I thought was right. So one of the things that I proposed back then was that instead of just taking the 15, 20, 25 illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever we want to refer to, and transporting them back to the southern border to restart their journey again. I propose that we infiltrate the organizations and go after the criminal heads. Believe it or not, I got approval to go by myself into Mexico. I infiltrated one of the organizations. I got smuggled back to Chicago. We were in the back of a U-Haul where I lost complete control of where I was going. I had no backup, but ultimately we're successful. The ironic thing is that had I not been in that group, the smuggler had planned to abandon the group in northern Texas when he got lost in a blinding snowstorm. So my presence there actually resulted in saving the people that were being transported in a locked U-Haul going to Chicago. So I took the liberty, and I don't know if you're able to use it, I took the liberty of sending you some pictures of that U-Haul back then with the people in the back of that U-Haul. So except for the very, very good luck and, because of God's purpose, I survived that incident myself. But that's part of my history. After Chicago, I worked along the border. I infiltrated the biggest smuggling organizations, and I'm proud to say that I will tell you that I busted the top 5, 6, 7 cases that in history of INS and ICE, I was the agent that infiltrated those groups that prosecuted the smugglers. So I'm very proud of that.
I want to, Hipolito, I was looking at the photographs that you provided us of the reconfigured tankers where they were smuggling, you said, up to 80 human beings back in the day that you were an agent undercover. But look at that picture. In 1939 to 1945, the Third Reich, the German Nazis, transported people in hot boxcars for labor camps. And, the world turned their heads. And when they finished with the labor camps, because the human beings transported in that situation would have disease, would starve to death, they exterminated those folks, the Jews. And, the Jewish community correctly always says never again. But here it is in 2022. The United States government knows that we are allowing the transportation of human beings in boxcars, in tankers, in trains, in vessels, all for the importation of cheap labor. And to me, that's an abomination and a stain on the federal government. There are 3 branches of government. 2 of them are failing not only the immigrants, but the taxpayers of the United States by not controlling the situation. It's a modern day tragedy. The American government is a co-conspirator in the importation of cheap labor, and it's unacceptable. And it's time the American people stand up and speak up.
Orlando, those are excellent points. And on that particular tanker, I want to emphasize that that tanker was actually, we encountered it in southern Mexico. So we have accomplices, if you want to say, in the Mexican government, because I would almost venture to say we discovered that tanker through one of my informants in southern Mexico, who turned over to the Mexican authorities. And I can bet you, and I can't confirm this, but that tanker, after we encountered it, I bet you it went back into use for the same purpose because of the fact that that's the way it has been operating down there. Ironically, and again, you and I will discuss what happens internally in our country because we care about it, but also, and Mexico can deal with their own particular issues. But yesterday, I heard the Mexican president, address and how sorry he felt for the migrants that were coming. Never did I hear him say, we are going to work to stop this flow of illegal migration to the United States so they don't place themselves in that risky venture again. We have a responsibility, and I understand that. They have a responsibility as well. You don't get 100 people into a tractor trailer, crossing them into the border without some kind of complicity on the officials on the Mexican side. It's certainly people can get through, but everything is controlled in Mexico. The cartels control the human smuggling, they control the narcotics trade, and the bottom line, they have responsibility. How do you have 100, 200, 300 people cross across Mexico and make it to the border were it not for the fact that Mexico is turning a blind eye to it. So there's a lot of blame to put out there, but there's a lot of responsibility. I'm not looking to place blame. You and I will say we expect our government to do better. Our government should expect the foreign governments to do better as well.
Yeah, no, but I began the program by saying, Hipolito, that our Congress has not addressed in a significant manner immigration issues since 1986. And in 1939 and through 1945, the world now knows that the Axis forces were loading people into trains to send them to labor camps. We know in 2022 that bad actors like the Axis, which are the human smugglers, the drug cartels, are loading people into boxcars and trains and car trunks for the importation of cheap labor into the United States. And again, it's time that the federal government and this Congress protect the U.S. taxpayer and also secure our border.
It goes without saying. And one of the proposals actually that I have made before, I actually met with a former ICE director in Washington, D.C. Under the previous administration. And I gave him what I thought was a proposal because of the fact that California, of course, plays by its own rules on some occasions, and that's not denigrating California. But I told the ICE director, Tom Homan, I said, Tom, if you can't enforce a law in California, all you have to do is enforce employer compliance. And how do you do that? By issuing subpoenas for the businesses that are employing people in the United States illegally. And believe it or not, Orlando and Andrea, and this is from personal experience, employers will immediately start complying when they know that they are under the gun, that a subpoena has been issued, and that they're going to be either criminally charged or fined for the use
No,
of
no,
that illegal
no,
workforce.
no question about it. I have stated this before. If you want to eliminate illegal immigration, you go after the source that provides them employment. But we do not have domestic employment. And the tragedy is that everybody hates the immigrant. And I tell people, they're only doing and fulfilling their natural God-given instinct. They're trying to survive. They can't feed their children. Their countries are war torn. There's gangs and there's all sorts of misery in a lot of those Latin American neighborhoods. They're doing what's natural. They hear that the border's open, that they can cross and they can get a job and they can live the American lifestyle. Hell, why not? So again, if tomorrow, if Congress passed legislation that they're going to go after the people that employ undocumented aliens for the purpose of cheap labor, it would go a long way to saving lives. But again, Congress will not get up off its rear end because it doesn't want to address the important issues facing our country.
Completely agree, Orlando. I think you and I have been on the same page for a long time about that particular issue. You've got to start getting that magnet removed from these people coming into the country, whether it's the people come up here, they want to reunite with their family members, but they are also coming here because they are going to work. And you and I understand it. We understand that people are going to do that, but people also understand that if it cannot be done, they're going to stop. Employers understand that they're going to be fined and criminal prosecuting. Look at Tyson's. Tyson's, when they were fined a substantial amount of money, the contractors under Walmart, believe it or not, they instituted compliance programs because they didn't want to be criminally charged as an organization. That can be done throughout the country. And here's the ironic thing about it. You don't need thousands of agents to do that. What ICE needs to do is issue subpoenas for I-9s, I-9 audits, and they're required to supply them within 3 days to the government. Of course, they can get an extensions, but again, you would be surprised how quickly companies decide they're going to come into compliance or face those huge fines or criminal penalties. So the thing is, you don't need to increase the workforce. You need to issue the subpoenas. Auditors for ICE sometimes take 1 or 2 years before they come back with the results for internal audits, Orlando. You're never going to get done with that.
Hipolito, I wanted you to talk from the point of view of the Border Patrol agents. As a former Border Patrol agent, tell us about that scenario now, because I think it's their mission and their job is to protect the border, and now they are like dedicating a lot of resources to protect the immigrants, to try to save them. It's going crazy and out of the real purpose and job that they are doing.
Well, let me share with you. My three sons are agents, by the way. So, they each and every day they are dedicated to enforcing the law, protecting our country. They also treat people with dignity. I have pictures of my own son saving lives out of the border, pulling people out of the river. Doing making sure that folks survive because of the fact that when you're saving a life, just like happened here in San Antonio, they put everything aside to make sure that that person is taken care of. Now, the unfortunate thing is that over the years, we have neglected it so much that we have a tendency to move agents from one place to another. The policies changed. Where you have 1,000 people showing up at the border, and this happened before, by the way, under the Reagan administration as well, because I was in charge of the investigations branch in Brownsville. So what happens is that actually we take away from the security that we're trying to enforce at the border. Obviously, we deviate to other areas that we're going to handle. But let me say this: our border patrol agents out there do their job day in and day out. They're there to protect the country. I will tell you that in my travels, because I do travel a lot along the southern border, is that they are demoralized. There's a lot of agents that are very demoralized. We have a very divided country, to be honest with you, because of our politics. But at the end of the day, they all try to do their jobs. I think it's a morale factor that certainly plays into them doing their jobs, but they're still going to do the job to protect their country. And let me share with you that these people that were in that tractor trailer, it wasn't because the border patrol wasn't enforcing the law. It's the number of people coming into the country, as has happened over the years, and going back to Orlando's statement of why they're coming here, has continued. And unless we take a different approach to this issue, it's not going to change.
Let me also say the following. Several years ago, there was a Houston police officer, I believe. He was a law enforcement agent from the Houston area. He was caught transporting an undocumented alien. Let me tell you what the penalty was. He lost his badge, lost his automobile, because if you get caught, Hipolito, down in South Texas, transporting somebody, let's just say I'm in Del Rio and I run into a man that asked me for a job, and he's going to come over and paint my house, and I'm driving him from Del Rio to Bracketville, Texas, and I get pulled over by DPS or CBP, and he's undocumented. My car's confiscated, and I pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. This is what happens to American citizens who inadvertently may give somebody a ride somewhere. Because we're not Border Patrol agents. We don't have any way to check the legal status of somebody, but yet the burden is put on us. This is how ridiculous the laws are in this country.
Well, without a doubt, I think we have such a disparity, Orlando, in how we pursue, how much we're doing. I work both under the Department of Justice and under the Department of Homeland Security. And the big changeover basically after 9/11 was getting all agents together under customs, immigration, and frankly, it's a lot more juicy to work customs cases than work immigration cases, because if you're working a narcotics case, you finish the evidence, you place it away, and you're done with it. You lock up the evidence, you tag it. Not so with human smugglers or human smuggling. The people have to be taken care of. Medical attention has to be given. The amount of resource given to it. And you mentioned something at the very beginning. We are losing so much because of the fact that our system is so easy to manipulate. Not only for people that come into the country and we have to take care of them. On this particular incident, I think all three of us will agree, let's provide them the medical attention that they need, because that's what we are in America. But also, our system is so easy to manipulate for benefits, for food stamps, for all types of benefits, that the impact that it has by us not dealing with the immigration issue is huge.
Yeah,
Hipolito,
and
on
and I,
your
hang on, Andrea, one real quick while you were talking, Hipolito, because I wanted to go back. This was November of 2015. A Houston police officer and his wife were arrested on human smuggling charges for transporting one person. God knows what the situation is, why the Houston police officer was transporting, maybe to do some work. But the article says a Houston police officer has been terminated after he and his wife were arrested in South Texas on one count each of human smuggling. Juan Carrillo, 51, and Rosa Carrillo, 42, of Cyprus, were arrested Sunday back in 2015 during a stop by Border Patrol agents that took place on Highway 85 in Big Wells, which is about 60 miles east of the border checkpoint in Eagle Pass. I know you know where that is. So, the federal government will come down on a Houston police officer and his wife because perhaps they unaware of the legal status of the person they were transporting, and he lost his job. He probably had to pay hundreds of thousands in fines, lost his vehicle, and so the weight of the world comes down on us, U.S. citizens, if we inadvertently transport somebody. But yet, this crap is happening, and the Biden administration is turning their head. I'm not blaming just the Democrats because this has been going on since 1986. So, both parties are to blame. But again, this is the ridiculousness of the statutes that we're operating.
Well, that's certainly true. But I'll tell you what, and by the way, that was under the previous administration. So you're entirely right. We're not placing the blame. It's just that what we have to deal with. I don't know the circumstances on this folks, but I will tell you also that if there was intent, if there was some willful gain, if there were some other circumstances, and if he was a police officer, perhaps he should have lost his job. If they were doing something, if they picked somebody up, Orlando, that they knew they weren't supposed to pick up, or there were some other arrangements, and that could be the case. The penalty of losing his employment certainly is a huge penalty compared to what we had. If you remember, American Apparel had 1,800 illegal aliens working for their place up in California when they were audited, and instead of being prosecuted, they just had to get rid of the people that were working, and nothing else happened. So you know what happened with those 1,800 people? They moved down the street and they started working for somebody else.
Exactly, and that's the ridiculousness of this situation. For example, in the article back in 2015 for this Houston police officer and his wife Rosa, if convicted, both defendants would have faced 10 years in the federal penitentiary and a maximum fine of $250,000. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Western District of Texas said by email. So again, this is a man and his wife. I don't know what the circumstances. I haven't read this entire article and if in fact they were convicted. But why don't we do the same thing to the people that are employing the illegal alien? It's just crazy. Congress needs to get up off their rear ends and go to work.
Well, and let me share with you, when I was in the Western District of Texas, because I used to work in that particular area, one of the policies that was instituted by the U.S. Attorney's Office out of San Antonio and El Paso, which handled the Western District of Texas, was that if a smuggler had 5 or more illegal aliens, then they would be prosecuted. But if it was less, we would not prosecute them. So, the smugglers, of course, modified their behavior, you want to say it as such, and they would transport 4, and you would arrest them, and they would release them. And ultimately, on that article that I sent you on Operation Chapin, which is the Guatemalan case, it was happening during that particular area. Ironically, any case that I took, the U.S. Attorney's Office would prosecute because of my history, my background. Other agents would take them, they would not. So to prove a point with the U.S. Attorney's Office, I took that case right there, Operation Chapin, and you have the article on it, and I presented the case in Dallas, Texas, and it really ticked off the Western District of Texas because they still had to do the removal hearings, the presenting of the defendants to the judge. But that was the reason I prosecuted it in Dallas, Texas. That's where they got convicted. We removed the people from the Western District of Texas into Dallas, because we could use the jurisdiction where the criminal activity took place, and that was both in Dallas, El Paso, and of course in Rhode Island. But it's ridiculous. Again, they finally changed their policy, and I think I'm getting the figure wrong. I think it was 6 or more that they had to be taken in order for them to be prosecuted, and that's on record, by the way. That's not something that I'm making up.
Yeah.
Hipolito, in all your
You're
years
absolutely
of
correct. And I'll tell you, the people to blame are the U.S. Congress. I mean, everybody likes to get mad at the immigrant. Everybody likes to get mad at CBP. But this is a congressional problem. I know we're probably running out of time. Hipolito, I want to thank you and your family and your kids that are still serving our country as CBP agents.
Thank you, Orlando. Thank you so much.
Hipolito,
One of
in all your years of experience, you think that anything the government have done to try to solve this situation, or we're just getting worse and worse as we see it?
Well, like Orlando, I'm at the age where I can speak my mind. I think this administration that we have right now, it's a complete disaster. The topics of asylum, applying, the changes, it's a complete disaster. I think that the morale is really being affected in all areas of the Department of Homeland Security that deals with immigration, Border Patrol, ICE agents. It's demoralizing when they do that. You apprehend individuals in the country, and then you release them, you process them and release them. So again, it goes back to what Orlando started with. We are now accomplices in what's happening. But on the other side of the coin, Andrea, because you and I also had interactions in our younger years as far as services in providing the proper services for immigrants that were trying to legalize their stay here in the country. As you might recall, even though enforcement was my background, when I came to Houston, my point was we would treat people the right way, we would process applications timely, and we would deny those that were fraud. Now the case is just to get an employment authorization document, for your information, in Orlando, it takes anywhere from 22 to 26 months. So what happens when your green card expires, you have to renew, and you pay again and again for the employment authorization documents. A green card, you only renew it once, and then you renew it after 10 years. But again, this is where it's at. And I spoke to officers at the Western Service Center where they process this type of documents. And I said, guys, why are you taking 22, 24 months to do that? They said, well, we're dealing with the asylum seekers, we process them. The reality is the asylum seekers get processed and they don't get seen again for a year or 2 years if they show up at all. So again, I think that this administration came in with a thought process changing a lot of the things what they saw as an inhumane treatment of people coming into the country. It wasn't inhumane. There was enforcement of the law before. I didn't exactly agree with the entire policies and concept of President Trump, but I also believe that we needed to change what we're doing. I think that the only thing that I'm critical about President Trump's administration is the fact that they did not do any employer compliance either. Had they done that, I think it would have gotten to the point where we needed to be, and that's something that needs to be done in the future. And then let's come back to what Orlando said. Congress needs to get together. They need to put the laws on the books. They need to force the agencies to hold the employers accountable. Then we'll get to the point that we need to be.
Hipolito, now before we go off the air, talk about your books and where we can find your books, and it's based on your experience all of these years.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. As you well know, you and Orlando know, I've written 3 books. The first one was The Shadow Catcher, where actually I have actually stories about being smuggled in the back of a U-Haul, stories about me being smuggled from Tijuana all the way to Chicago, busting the biggest counterfeiter in the history of our agency. Then later in my career, I did a case called, The Hunt for Singh is my second book. That second book details money laundering investigations that we did involving Pakistanis, Indians, a human smuggling organization that was based in Ecuador. And it was a fantastic case. there was the first Title III case, which means that was the first wiretap case that ever had been done by the U.S. Immigration Service. I ended up going to a press conference with Janet Reno, the Attorney General at the time, on that particular case. And by the way, as I told you during the last time, we're still in the process of actually hopefully presenting that particular script to the studios here next month with John Huertas, who recently finished filming on This Is Us. He's going to be one of the producers for that particular program. Should we be able to get through the studios? And then the last one I think is important. It's called Deep in the Shadows. And Deep in the Shadows is important because it details some of the efforts that I did to go outside the country and bring people into the country to prosecute them, even if they had not set foot in the United States, but they violated our laws. And I think that's pretty important because since I retired and before, when I was in Mexico City, they have used the concepts that I initiated to go after the smugglers, whether they're based in Nicaragua, Colombia, Ecuador, and we have been very successful. When I was a district director in Mexico City, I think we ended up prosecuting close to 100 people who were operating outside the United States. And why do I mention this? There's operatives outside the United States that are involved with the present human tragedy that we have right now. And I would encourage our government to work with the foreign governments to go after those individuals, even in their own backyard.
Excellent. Hipolito, thank you so much. Gracias por todo lo que has hecho. Thank you so much for your time. And I know, you're gonna continue. We're gonna continue seeing you on the news all this week because it's still happening, and we need to tell the stories. It's very important what you're doing, and of course have access to your experience.
Well, I want to thank both of you as well. Of course, I have known both of you since I arrived in Houston, I guess in early 2000. And I want to thank both of you as well for having me on the program. I think we have an important message to share. And I want to share something that I think is important. Latinos, for the most part, we are very conservative, and I think we need to keep on working with those particular feelings that we have because we're patriotic, we're family oriented, and we want the best for our country. And I thank you guys for taking the message across, to the viewers that we have watching this program.
Well, you're absolutely right. Thank you again for your service and for the wonderful work that your children are doing along the border. We're very proud of them and want to wish you guys the very best and Godspeed. And, as our former director mentioned, the anger oftentimes is directed towards the immigrant. And it's high time that we realize that the anger should be directed at the federal government and particularly the congressional branch, whom we support by paying taxes to enforce the laws and pass laws that protect not only human life, but avoid situations like we've had in San Antonio, like we've had in Victoria, like the deaths that occur in the desert. And, as I said at the beginning of the program, this problem could be resolved in a week if Congress got together and, as our former director Acosta says, that you have enforcement. You have enforcement domestically, and you fine heavily and arrest the people that are employing the undocumented workers, and then you enforce the laws on the border. Remove the burden off the property taxpayers of the state of Texas. This administration, and again, there's plenty of blame to go around. I'm not blaming a particular party, the Democrats or the Republicans, but it is a fact that a Democrat president, is in office, and he has created the biggest immigration nightmare that we have experienced in a long time. It's high time both parties got together and worked for the American people. And that's my comment today, Andrea, and I look forward to seeing you next week back in the great state of Texas.
Oh, qué bueno, ya que ya regresas. Okay, gracias Hipolito, awesome. Gracias Orlando. See you next Wednesday here in Houston. This beautiful weather waiting for you.
Thank you both.
Gracias. Y gracias a todos ustedes. Thank you so much to everybody for watching us every Wednesday, for supporting us. And if you haven't login in our website is texaslatinoconservatives.com, texaslatinoconservatives.com. Become a member and also check our schedule for Leadership Latino. We have 2 classes coming up in August. So if you are thinking running for office, if you are thinking to be a leader in your community, or if you're just thinking to learn more about our organization, just sign in. It's completely free. So please check it out, our website, texaslatinoconservatives.com, texaslatinoconservatives.com. Become a member. It's only $35 a year. Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao.